Hello everyone, and welcome back to Electronic Journeys. I am your host, Jeffrey Hoke, and in many ways, not a lot has changed since our first episode. We're still on the Sony PlayStation 1, we're still in Japan, and we're still in 1997. Alphabetically, we're pretty close too, only a couple letters off. Genre-wise, not so much. Today, we are looking at puzzle action cult hit IQ Intelligent Qube, also known as Kurushi if you're one of those European types. Kurushi, of course, being an incomplete romanization of the Japanese word Kurushi with the elongated E, meaning painful, difficult, agonizing. Sounds fun! Developed by the Tokyo-based Studio G artists and published by Sony themselves, Intelligent Qube was a bit of an odd duck on the PlayStation amidst a library full of other odd ducks. So let's break it down. The puzzle action genre classification is somewhat of an unofficial one, but I have heard it bounced around a few times in reference to certain games, mostly Tetris. Perhaps its coinage has something to do with Sega's Puzzle and Action arcade minigame compilation series? Not sure. I like using it because I think it's important to make a distinction in mechanical lineages between pure puzzle games that require little to no quick thinking, reflex testing, hand-eye coordinating input complexities such as the Sokoban series or Chips Challenge or the devilishly difficult and well underrated Migi Hidari USA, and arcade action focused games in which the action you are challenged to perform just so happens to be solving puzzles, like your Puyo Puyos and Panel de Pawns and Puzzle Bobbles and whatnot. Intelligent Qube is firmly of the latter classification, and is quite a unique and heart-pumping take on the genre at that, even when compared to the best of the classics. The only game I know of that feels like a direct antecedent to Intelligent Qube is Nintendo's NES swan song Wario no Mori, or Wario's Woods. Aesthetically, they could not be more different, but in both you control a little dude running around to manipulate the puzzle pieces of the game area, instead of directly navigating the pieces yourself as in most puzzle action games. Applying a player avatar to the typically oppressive puzzle action headspace creates a sense of urgency and gravitas uncommon in the genre, morphing the traditional emotion contained in their fail slate from "I'm gonna lose" to "I'm gonna die," a feeling which gives Intelligent Qube much of its memorable oomph. So, how do you play this strange, existentially terrifying digital void set Qube game? Well, the basic rules are thankfully quite simple. Intelligent Qube is played from a behind-the-back view of your tiny player character on a rectangular grid of squares. Several rows toward the back of the grid are then raised and begin rolling toward the player. These rolling cubes come in three varieties: normal cubes, whose colors match that of the ground they raised out of, advantage cubes, which glow a neon green, and forbidden cubes, forebodingly black as the void that surrounds you. The player's moveset is sparse, comprising only 3 buttons. The X button marks whatever square the player is standing on, turning it blue with a helpful little arrow above it so you don't lose track of it once it's covered by a cube. Pressing X again will then deactivate the mark and also capture any cube that happens to be on it, removing it from play. Capturing a normal cube in this way merely vanishes it, but capturing a forbidden cube is a no-no, and doing so instantly destroys the frontmost row of the playing area, lessening the amount of space to maneuver about in, and reducing the overall amount of time you have to solve the stage's forthcoming puzzles. Finally, capturing an advantage cube converts the player's blue mark into a green one. The player can then tap the triangle button to trigger all existing green marks simultaneously. Doing so transforms each into a 3x3 grid that captures any cubes within. Lovely for blowing out lots of normal cubes and more advantage cubes all at once, but quite easy to miscalculate, especially when you're managing multiple of them, and accidentally taking down a bunch of forbidden cubes alongside them, each one of which incurs its own separate deadly penalty. The player's goal is thus quite clear: capture all of the normal and advantage cubes, and none of the forbidden ones. And there is a reward for doing exactly that. For every puzzle that is cleared perfectly in accordance with these rules, a new row is added to the front of the playing area, expanding the amount of space to maneuver about in and increasing the overall amount of time you have to solve the stage's forthcoming puzzles. The game announcer also gives you a nice perfect, which is very satisfying, and you score a bonus depending on how many rows the cubes advanced between your first and last capture. Puzzles aren't considered cleared until all the forbidden cubes have fallen off of the front of the stage, however, which can take quite some time if you're an efficient puzzle solver. Thankfully, you can speed up the process by holding down the square button. Just look at them go. Careful though, it's pretty easy to misuse this feature and get yourself crushed in the process. And while getting cube stomped does not kill the player, it carries a pretty hefty penalty of its own. If you look at the bottom right of Intelligent Qube's HUD, you'll see a row of white rectangles called the block scale. This scale tracks how many non-forbidden cubes you have allowed to roll off the front of the stage, and every time its value is exceeded, you also lose the frontmost row of the playing area, lessening the amount of space to maneuver about in and reducing the overall amount of time you have to solve the stage's forthcoming puzzles. But what does this have to do with getting smushed? Well, a lot. Because if said smushing does indeed occur, you insta-fail the puzzle and all remaining cubes in it automatically roll to the front and off the stage. To make matters worse, even the forbidden cubes are counted against you on the block scale when this happens, so you could easily end up losing half a dozen or more rows all at once. Not good. Afterward, the game sends the exact same ignominy-causing puzzle your way, so as to offer a redemption of sorts. That is, unless the puzzle that thwarted you so happens to be the last in the current series, in which case the game mercifully progresses to the next wave of puzzles automatically, or even to the stage's end if you are already in the final puzzle series. Now, you may be thinking, if getting smashed by a cube doesn't kill you, how do you actually lose the game? Well, there is only one way to lose an Intelligent Qube, and that is by falling off the front of the stage yourself. There is an invisible wall surrounding the stage preventing you from just accidentally wandering to your doom, helpfully, but there are still two ways of managing your demise. One is by standing on a row that gets excised either from Forbidden Cube capture or Non-Forbidden Cube non-capture. The other is by the initial raising of the cubes at the beginning of a puzzle wave. If there are not enough rows of the playing area left to accommodate the elevating cubes, then off you go, rolling into oblivion. In terms of its overall structure, Intelligent Qube takes place over a series of 9 stages, and each stage contains exactly 4 of these potentially player-killing puzzle waves, as shown by an indicator just above the current score in the top left of the HUD. Additionally, Intelligent Qube's narrative is almost purely a mechanical one, expressed primarily through a gradual increase in the scale of these puzzles contained in these waves. On the screen now, which you can pause if you are so interested, is a breakdown of these increases. As you can see, stages 1 and 2's grids are 4 squares wide, and their puzzles progress from 2 rows deep to 6 rows deep. In other words, from 8 cube puzzles to 24 cube puzzles. Stages 3 and 4 are 5 squares wide, and their puzzles increase from 4 rows to 8 rows, with the 4th stage reducing the number of puzzles per wave from 3 to 2 to account for their increased depth. 5 and 6 are 6 wide, with puzzles going from 6 rows to 9 rows, again the 6th stage containing a fewer 2 puzzles per wave. And finally, the 7th, 8th, and final stages are a massive 7 squares wide, with puzzles ranging from 7 rows up to 9 rows deep, which means the puzzles top out at containing a whopping 63 cubes, a far cry from the measly 8 we started at. The 8th stage follows in the footsteps of 4 and 6 by only having 2 puzzles per wave, and the final stage reduces this even further by offering one single nerve-wracking mega puzzle per wave. The final stage also has a unique quirk to it, if you're playing on the game's lowest difficulty, level 0, that is, which is that the game no longer tracks for you with those helpful little arrows where your various blue and green marks are. This means you must keep track and memorize them in real time in your head as you play the hardest stage of the game, because now, once they are covered by a cube, they're no longer visible. No joke, the first time I reached this point in the game, this seemingly minor mechanical changeup gave me a low-grade panic attack. But there's more to this unexpected trial by fire than a brief moment of late-game design cruelty. In fact, it's actually the way the entire game is meant to be played, and is the default behavior of every higher difficulty than 0. In those, the game only grants you the helper arrows temporarily upon getting cube crushed, as a grace to help you get back on track. Otherwise, it's all gotta be tracked manually in the old noodle. The real Intelligence Qube starts here. The only other major way the higher difficulties of Intelligent Qube change the experience is by increasing the speed at which the cubes roll down the stage. Level 1 is the same as 0, but levels 2, 3, and 4 get progressively more accelerated. Which brings me to the core of this episode, a challenge. Unlike Klonoa, a beat-by-beat examination of a playthrough of Intelligent Qube is not a particularly revealing endeavor. So instead, I'll be relating my experience with it through a challenge, the first of many challenge episodes to come, to be sure. So, what will I be attempting? You may have noticed that I have made very little reference to the scoring mechanics of Intelligent Qube in any of my preceding explanations. That's because, by and large, and with very few exceptions, but there are exceptions, I am not particularly interested in playing games for score, so if you are watching Electronic Journeys in the hopes of in-depth, high-score chasing analysis, you will be disappointed. Besides, I wouldn't be able to do half as good a job as the likes of the Electric Underground, so go watch his channel instead. It's easily one of the best, if not the best, game analysis channel on YouTube. Be sure to come back though. As an argument against my personal preferences, Intelligent Qube was definitely designed to be played for score. Its name is even derived from the IQ it assigns the player upon game over. IQ being a kind of simplified secondary score derived from a multiplication algorithm applied to your full score. If you're interested in the math, I've left a link in the description to a blog entry I found going over the details of it. Okay, so I'm an arcade heathen, and don't much care for high scores, right? Well, no I don't, but I do care about the other major accolade of arcade prowess demonstration. That is the 1 credit clear, or 1cc for short. As such, the challenge I chose to undertake for this episode seemed an obvious one, a 1cc of the game's hardest difficulty, level 4. I prepared for this challenge by failing to 1cc level 3, or 2 for that matter, and then deciding, hey, I got close enough, let's just jump headfirst into level 4. And so I did. Oh boy. Let's start with attempt 1. Stages 1 and 2 are pretty easy and uneventful, so let's skip over those. Besides, I didn't have my capture configured properly, so my footage of them has no audio. Not that I really need audio for the purposes of this recording, but yeah, it's my video, and we're gonna skip to the beginning of stage 3. Luckily, I realized somewhat early in the run I wasn't recording any audio, which is why the game is paused here. Okay, it's unpaused. Let's go. Wow, I immediately make a mistake and capture a forbidden cube. Off to a great start. Okay, here's a technique I got from watching a long play on YouTube. I forget which one. Before you even know what the next puzzle is, just mark a random square in the first row. Chances are you'll be able to immediately capture a cube. Constantly capturing cubes is very important because they stop rolling during the capture process, giving you time to plan your next move. On the distressingly fast level 4, this is absolutely mandatory. One thing I learned for sure while failing difficulty levels 2 and 3 is that I needed a proper strategy for tracking where my marks were. So I devised a counting method where whenever I placed a mark, I would announce out loud to myself the number of rows the oncoming cubes needed to advance before I triggered it. I didn't do this that much for regular blue marks, as those are pretty easy to keep track of, but nearly always did it for the green advantage cube ones unless I was able to safely trigger them immediately. It's a pretty simple process really, with backwards counts starting at 1, 2, or 3 being the most common, depending on, respectively, if the advantage cube was 1 row behind in the same row or 1 row in front of the forbidden cubes it was in danger of unwantedly capturing. Then, when the count gets to 0, take a breath, trust the process, and press the triangle button. This counting technique worked especially well for me when chaining advantage cubes together, like in this staircase pattern here, 2, 1, 0. 2, 1, 0, 2, 1, 0, 1, 0. Very nice. Somehow this out loud counting process helped separate my brain threads and freed up my hands to do what they needed to do to keep capturing as many cubes as possible. Multitasking is essential to clearing Intelligent Qube, and the way the game challenges you to do so makes for quite a unique gaming experience. A strangely large amount of the game takes place in your head. What I mean by that is a good portion of it is not directly informed by the audio-visual feedback the game is giving you. Counting out the rows, tracking where all your hidden marks are, intuiting how much room you have behind you to maneuver without actually being able to see it, and so on. These elements of the game ping-ponging around in your brain, while your hands and some other part of your brain figure out the best path through its puzzles, create a singular mental exercise very fitting for a game called IQ. Anywho, with the combination of this counting technique and the random mark placement trick I stole from YouTube, the rest of Stage 3 passes by pretty effortlessly, though I do get cube stomped on the very last puzzle like a dummy, costing me 4,000 points of my stage bonus. The number of remaining rows you have at stage end are tallied up and you score 1,000 for each. The advantage cube patterns start getting trickier on Stage 4, which you really have to pay attention to. You do not want to have too many green marks active at once, or it becomes next to impossible to keep track of them all. Properly routing advantage cube paths through each puzzle is crucial for success. That being said, I more or less dominate Stage 4, but from clearing the game on lower difficulties, I know the puzzles get much harder later on, so I'm not too excited yet. Stage 5. Here I want to start talking about the music in Intelligent Qube. I would have started at Stage 1, but remember, I forgot to capture the audio. Whoops. The good news is that the music tracks loop starting with the 5th stage, so stages 1 and 5 share the same BGM, as do 2 and 6, 3 and 7, and 4 and 8. Usually reusing tracks in a video game is grounds for criticism, but the thing about Intelligent Qube's music is that it's incredible. Takayuki Hattori's compositions are outstanding. If it weren't for this reuse, I would place Intelligent Qube in the pantheon of what I call album games. Games that owe a significant portion of their greatness to their musical experience. Titles such as Bare Knuckle, Katamari Damacy, Mirror's Edge, amongst others. Stage 1 and 5's BGM is perfect puzzle-solving romanticism, eerie and tense but surmountable, and the melodic passage just before the piece loops back to the beginning is pure Sugiyama. Lovely. Okay, I've delayed long enough. Stage 5 is where run number 1 takes a turn for the worse. Puzzles 1 and 2 go okay enough, but on the last puzzle of the first wave, I accidentally trigger a green mark immediately after capturing an advantage cube, taking down 5 forbidden cubes all at once. That's 5 rows of the stage gone before the second wave has even begun. A sense of doom sets in. I lose another row on the first puzzle of wave 2 and feel a failure cascade is imminent. Though somehow following that, I pull off 2 perfects back to back and actually net 1 row for the second wave. While I manage to lose only a single row on the terrifying first puzzle of wave 3, I then unfortunately lose another on the second from sloppy advantage cube usage. Thankfully, wave 3 puzzle 3, while rather ominous looking, proves to be the easiest of the stage. Wave 4 starts off with another row loss, but puzzles 2 and 3 go perfectly smoothly and I make it to stage 6. Phew! Stage 2/6's BGM is a step up on the grandiosity scale, especially when the chorus comes in. It seems to me a prophecy of my doom. However, Stage 6 goes perfectly smoothly aside from some more boneheaded advantage cube mishaps in Wave 3. Stage 7 is the first of 3 with the play area at the full width of 7 cubes. The BGM it shares with Stage 3 is dour and pessimistic and... is that a bassoon? Is its taunting melody trying to insinuate that I'm a buffoon? No matter, I score 2 perfects and gain 2 rows on the very first wave in an act of defiance to the entire family of woodwind instruments. Wave 2 goes even better, and I land perfects on all 3. At this point, I'm starting to feel the pressure. I'm doing much better than expected for my first attempt, and it's disconcerting me a little. Losing a row on Wave 3 Puzzle 1 brings me back to reality a bit, but then I follow it up with 2 more perfects. Wave 4 goes down easy as well. What is going on? Stage 8 and 4's BGM is mockingly cheerful, like my little business casual avatar is secretly a Clark Kent type hidden superhero man or something. It is hype though. Stage 8's puzzles are much harder than 7's, and I lose a row on the very first one. Or are they? Because I don't lose another row for the rest of the stage, except for this screw it moment on the very last puzzle when I realize I'm trapped and capture a forbidden cube to escape. On to the final stage. At this point, my heart is beating like I'm about to clear R-Type or Contra or something. Pretty nuts for a puzzle game. The final stage has the same music as 2 and 6, which is a bit disappointing, but I'm too busy sweating to be disappointed. Is this gonna happen? 1cc of level 4 on my first try? Let's go. These endgame puzzles are fiendish, and you have very little time to do them. On the bright side, there's only 1 per wave, so 4 puzzles total. Doable, yeah? I lose a row on the first one, and the sweating continues. Then I lose another row on the second, which does not help things. Then I lose another on the third, which did help for some reason. And then on the final puzzle of my first attempt at a level 4 Intelligent Qube 1cc Q summoning salt voice, this happened. That's right, I didn't even attempt to solve the puzzle and just made a path for myself to run to safety at the end of the stage. Cowardly, but effective. Well, regardless of my methodology, 1cc achieved and challenge complete. It's here that things get weird. You see, Intelligent Qube has a plot twist, the twist being that it has a plot. Apparently, some hidden eldritch or alien-type being has been observing humanity for a while, and so eventually we built some sort of simulation technology that allowed us to indirectly communicate with them. They responded, of course, by sending us a standardized intelligence test, which is what the game we just played was. And by clearing it, we proved we are just as smart as they are, I guess Elliot, the dude you play as is named Elliot, by the way. I guess Elliot is like some genius that was picked up to go into the simulation to try and prove humanity's worth? Was his memory wiped? Is that why there's no upfront explanation as to what's going on? Who knows? It's a pretty cool reward for clearing the game though. I always like a little thematic framing to my abstract video game action. This final title card is pretty mystifying though. Beginning of Universe? A Space Odyssey-esque next stage of human evolution dealio, perhaps? Or just a haphazard translation? I tried to find footage of the Japanese version's ending, but surprisingly I couldn't find a single video of it. If someone finds it, please let me know what it says. That's of little consequence compared to what's next though. Ooh, check this out, a 10-character limit for the leaderboard, meaning the full name of my alter ego fits. Eagle-eyed viewers of episode 1 will notice that I had to truncate it to just Void for Klonoa. But that's not what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. Oh wait, no, it's the credits. My IQ is 481? Wow, not bad. Someone tell Mensa. No, it must be after the credits. Oh yeah, here it is. Proof I did it on my first try. Look, it's the only score on the leaderboard. There is absolutely no way I could fake that. Sure, there are actually plenty, but I swear I didn't. I ain't no liar. Anyway, there you have it. Challenge cleared on my first attempt. I suspect this is quite literally the only time this will ever happen for the entirety of this series, so please allow me to savor the moment. Maybe I should learn to play for score. One advanced trick I never really got the hang of is using blue marks to block green marks from capturing cubes you don't want them to. So with careful planning, you can actually stop your advantage cube chains from taking down unwanted forbidden cubes they otherwise would. I surmise that's an important technique to get down if you're aiming for those real high IQs. Maybe someday. For now, I'll take my 1cc dub. Okay, let's talk about Intelligent Qube's themes and aesthetic now that we've covered the material experience of clearing it. Yes, it's cleverly designed and exciting to play, but I honestly think the most special quality of the game is its presentation. The abstract, unexplained, until you complete it anyway, nature of a round of Intelligent Qube and its oppressive cosmic void setting gives it a distinct mythological feel, one that I can't think of a single other game that really touches upon. Is this the afterlife? Are we in a purgatory of sorts, or an alternate dimension, a computer simulation? Yes. It has a surprisingly evocative sense of place for a game set on a square grid surrounded by nothing. This mythological quality, its repetitious puzzle loop, and the sense of dread and confusion that Intelligent Qube seems to evoke in its players have led multiple people I've come across describe the experience of playing it as Sisyphean. And it's not difficult to understand why. The parallels between the story of Sisyphus, sentenced to eternally push a boulder up a hill, only for it to always roll back down to the base and force him to start over, and Intelligent Qube's scenario of wave after wave of rolling blocks threatening to knock you into the forever abyss is pretty plain to see, I think. Okay, so it's a flat-out obvious comparison, sure, maybe, but so what? Let it sink in for a minute anyway. Really think about it. How many other games can you name that remind you of ancient myths? Isn't that kind of dope? Ironically, from a structural standpoint, Intelligent Qube is actually less Sisyphean than any of the hundreds of infinitely looping arcade high score chasers of the 80s, or the thousands of endlessly scrolling mobile games, because it's completable. It can be conquered. Its boulder will eventually stay on top of its hill. But technicalities don't matter much in the emotional realm of artistic experience. What matters most is how a work makes you feel, and Intelligent Qube definitely makes me feel like Sisyphus. I'm not gonna lie, this is me when I'm Sisyphus. Furthermore, I think puzzle and puzzle action games are in a unique position to cover this sort of thematic territory. Riddles, mazes, challenges, battles of wits, etc. have been part of humanity's mythologies and fictions since the very beginning. There is something eternal about a good puzzle or riddle, something inherently mimetic about the process of knowing a clever answer to something someone else doesn't and challenging them to discover it, eventually sharing the solution with them so that they can later go on and issue the challenge to someone else. And puzzle action games, which combine the rapid onslaught of mechanically connected mini-challenges with the tactile feel of responsive design, are a recipe for some true forever works. Is there any doubt that Tetris will continue being played for the rest of humanity? Could someone really make a compelling argument that Go and chess will last forever, but Tetris won't? Barring electricity no longer being a thing, because reasons, I don't see it happening. And video games have only really been around for 50 years. We already got a Tetris? How many more Tetrises are out there that have yet to be conceived? There is an eternality to great abstract game and puzzle design, a detachment from current events and cultural touchpoints that forces them to speak for themselves. Look at the title screen and menus in Intelligent Qube, for example. They overflow with abstract confidence. Just some white words on a black background. No big deal. It's not a big deal, but you will get addicted to me. I'm just that good. I'll connect you to the infinite, man. I appeal to the inherent qualities of man that you didn't even know were still lurking around inside of you, dude. You know, that kind of thing. I guess what I'm trying to say is, let's find some more crazy puzzle design geniuses like Masahiko Sato, the heretofore unmentioned designer of Intelligent Qube, and get them to make crazy mythology-inspired cerebral brain-burning experiences. And that brings us to this episode's Dev Pro Tip. I'm calling this one, Translate Something New. One day, out of the blue, the image of a game just like this suddenly popped into my head. To be precise, it was April 9th, on a Sunday afternoon, 2 or 3 p.m. I saw humans standing in an abstract open space, with giant cubes coming at you. Masahiko Sato. So what do I mean by translate something new? Well, I think a lot of designers, when they go to create a new video game, what they do is they kind of look at what games exist, and then they grab, a mechanic from this game here, or a mechanic from that game there, and they mash them up into something new, new-ish, but ultimately it's still kind of a combination of things that we've all seen before. Developers look outside the realm of video games for experiences, atmospheres, ideas, things that, you have firsthand, not to say experience again, but firsthand experience with, and mechanically translate those genuinely new things into the language of gaming. Just how I was talking about, ancient myths. Actually, the Labyrinth, the Minotaur Labyrinth, that'd be a perfect, that's probably been, I have played games that reminded me of that. But look out at the vast world of art, literature, movies, your own personal experiences, ancient mythology, and find something that has not been defined in mechanical terms in a video game. I think that, it's very important that we have iterative works, and I'm not here to say that iterative works aren't important. Of course, iterative works are important, but there also needs to be an influx, a constant streaming in of genuinely new mechanical concepts, new things that are being expressed in the language of video games. The reason why I wanted to start with that quote by Masahiko Sato is he started with a vision. He didn't start by looking at video games and saying, oh, I could change this thing here, or I could do that thing here. He had a vision of an experience, of going through an experience, of being in a nightmare void and giant cubes rolling at you, and then he sought to capture that vision in video game form. That is a practice that was very, very, very common in the early days of, the first Sony PlayStation, because they went out of their way to hire people that were not video game designers, just to make sure that there was a constant influx of, exactly that, brand new things being translated. That's how Parappa the Rapper, for example, got made. Masaya Matsuda was not a game designer, he was a musician. And so what he did is he brought what he knew, music, into the game space, and he created an entire massive genre that led to huge stuff like Guitar Hero. So that is what the crux of today's Dev Pro Tip is. Translate something new. Don't just scramble around the games you like into something new-ish. Look outside. Look outside of your own life experiences, your favorite books, your favorite movies, those weird little subtle nuances in your favorite in your favorite things that just haven't really gotten defined mechanically in video game terms, and build something out of that. All right, now that we're formally acquainted with the man behind Intelligent Qube, and we know how, or at least when, the initial concept of the game came to light, let's dive a bit further into the game's development and release. Masahiko Sato, perhaps unsurprisingly, did not come from a professional game development background, but perhaps somewhat surprisingly, an advertising one. After he was struck by the vision for the game, he worked with the Studio G artists, with assistance by an internal Sony team as well, to bring it to reality. In an interview with Japanese magazine The PlayStation, translated again by the wonderful Black Oak over at shmuplations.com, Sato goes over his admiration for the timeless qualities of the music of the Beatles and Mozart. With IQ, I wanted to make something classic like that, but for games, he states. Certainly not lacking for ambition. The producer and director that took on the project were, respectively, Tetsuji Yamamoto and Kenji Sawaguchi, who previously led the development of Philosoma, a mediocre PlayStation-exclusive shmup with a perspective-switching gimmick that fails to impress. Sato himself mainly worked on the individual designs of the puzzles, while fellow designer Norio Nakamura playtested them, an arrangement they came to because Nakamura was significantly better at solving the puzzles than Sato, even the ones Sato himself designed. He'd sit there, playing it, saying, "Wow, this is a difficult problem," then solve it right away, Sato laughs later on in the same interview. One interesting element in the duo's design approach was that, though aesthetically the game is almost purely abstract, each puzzle had a conceptual basis corresponding to a real-world concept. For example, one puzzle was called the Courtroom because its shape felt to Sato like the cubes were surrounding and judging the player. Sato's conceptual and foundational work on Intelligent Qube pleasantly did not go unrecognized, and as soon as you boot it up, you're hit with a Masahiko Sato production, despite him not being the game's producer and in the end credits solely being listed as a planner. It kinda goes without saying, but when Intelligent Qube dropped in 1997 on the PlayStation, there was nothing else like it. The only game that even somewhat resembled it, maybe, was Blast Chamber, due to its similar cube-themed visuals and tiny little dude running around combo, but even that is a pretty big stretch. Genre-wise, it was a rather crummy and chaotic party platforming hybrid with sticky controls and a worthless camera. Furthermore, any game I play that has to load before its game over screen gets automatically added to my naughty list forever. Critically, Intelligent Qube garnered a slightly above middling reception, with most reviews scoring it somewhere in the 7 region. The general consensus here in the States was that the game was a lot more fun and addicting than it initially looked, but there were still doubts as to the longevity of its experience. You might be thinking must be one of those cases where us dumb Americans just didn't understand the value of such a unique and creative game. Surely those open-minded gamers over in Japan embraced it with open arms. Well, not quite. Because, believe it or not, the lowest scoring professional review I could find of Intelligent Qubes is actually Famitsu's, who shrugged it off with a mere 57.5%. It was well received by the Japanese public, however, and sold 500,000 copies in just a short couple of months, so I guess you can't really go by what Famitsu says all the time. Actually, if I'm being perfectly honest, I seem to disagree with them more often than not. I mean, just look at their Kingdom Hearts scores. Yikes! But that's neither here nor there, because it's time for today's review. Just as with Klonoa, we're going to GameRevolution again for Intelligent Qube. You know, I get the feeling we're going to be featuring these guys a lot on this segment, but I suppose we'll have to wait and see. Alright, GameRevolution again. I hope the one we did from them from Klonoa I found way funnier than I thought I was going to. Let's see if this one tickles me. I already think the title of the review is really funny. This one isn't just credited to GR staff, though, like Klonoa's was. This one actually has a name behind it. Mark Cook. I hope he sees this, and I hope he likes. I hope you enjoy. I hope you enjoy my coverage of your coverage of Intelligent Qube. The title of the review already is very funny. The title of the review is Good God, This Review Took a Long Time. Good God, This Review Took a Long Time. All right. Intelligent Qube, the game that measures your IQ, was one hard game to review. Hey, that rhymes! After 6 grueling months of intense game playing, without breaks for food and sex, no less. Strange. I've come to the conclusion that it doesn't accurately predict your IQ. These guys are hilarious. I've come to the conclusion that it doesn't accurately predict your IQ. No, luckily for me, my IQ isn't 2. This is gonna make me sweat. Luckily for me, my IQ isn't 2. Although it's not going to be used in any government studies anytime soon, the game is decently fun, even if the graphics look like they were made by a 2-year-old on speed. That's just such a throwaway line. There is no creative story behind the game. Somebody never beat it on a harder difficulty. There is no creative story behind this game. In the vein of Tetris, it's just pure puzzle. The point of Intelligent Qube is to destroy all of the gray and green blocks on the board without destroying any black blocks. This may seem simplistic, but the problem is that these blocks are incessantly approaching you and threatening to knock you off of the platform you're standing on. If you accidentally destroy one of these black blocks, part of the platform breaks off. Once the platform is too short, you will either fall off or get crushed by the tumbling blocks. Strategy is involved by using the green blocks, which destroys a large area of blocks on the board. These super blocks, he did not read the manual clearly, are advantageous, but also are dangerous because there is more of a chance of destroying the evil, menacing black blocks. This sounds fairly dumb. This sounds fairly dumb, but then again, so does Tetris when you explain it. Did he write the other review? He did the same thing where he criticizes the game he's playing for something, and then mentions a classic that he also does not, he feels the same way about the classic game as he does about this game. So it's like, why did you even say the thing? Well. It is a fairly fun game, but Intelligent Qube has some faults that make a purchase of Tetris the better buy. First off, the graphics stink. You could make the argument that they stink in Tetris, but Tetris was meant to have shoddy graphics. The makers of Tetris were like, these graphics suck on purpose. These graphics suck but we want them to suck. Anyways, God, these guys are hilarious. Intelligent Qube attempted to bring in the 3D graphics processing ability of the PlayStation to create an all-new playing experience, but it ended up with just a bunch of cubes with a couple of different textures on them. The graphics for the player are even worse. An untextured mess of a 3D model represents you. Animation is smooth, but with so little going on, that's expected. But it's a puzzle game, you say. Graphics don't matter. If that's how you feel, you'll need to know that there are some serious problems in the gameplay as well. Although the early levels are a blast, the game becomes exponentially hard too quickly. As more and more blocks appear on the screen, and as the playing field becomes wider and wider, the game becomes simply too hard. This guy's butthurt. Friends of mine who... I like the idea of writing a review and being like, this is how my friends feel about it. Friends of mine who consider themselves puzzle experts are dumbfounded at how difficult this game is. I once CC'd it on the level 4 on my first try, and I am not a puzzle expert. I don't know who this guy is surrounding himself with. But, yeah, let's not... whatever. It does deliver a good time in the beginning, but without serious practice, you'll have a hard time even getting close to beating the later levels. 2-player mode. Oh yeah, I forgot. There is a 2-player mode. It's just, you just take turns, which is why I didn't bother mentioning it in the main review. Or in my analysis. 2-player mode. The part of puzzle games that can make or break them. In the case of Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, great game by the way, it made the game. In the case of Intelligent Qube, it does nothing. No, this is funny. This is very funny. The part of puzzle games that can make or break them, it made Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, but it does not break Intelligent Qube. It does nothing. It's great writing. The 2-player mode presented in the game isn't even simultaneous. You play while your buddy waits and vice versa. You race to see who can complete a certain number of levels first. Whoever does wins. Talk about boring! I'd rather see a split-screen 2-player mode where when you destroyed a block on your side, a block dropped on your buddy's side. He is right about that, though. Junking opponents in old competitive puzzle games is like all the fun of them, like in Panel de Pon or Puyo Puyo or Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo. He's right about that. Since there is no story, little does he know, and single-player mode becomes old fairly rapidly, the 2-player mode saves many puzzle games from entering into total obscurity. The first half of that sentence is specifically about Intelligent Qube, and the second half is about all puzzle games. This is just, I guess, par for the course for these guys. Unfortunately for Intelligent Qube, it just pushes it deeper and deeper into that niche. Into what niche? Into the niche of obscurity? What niche? Jeez. Sound and music are negligible. Malarkey. The music in this game is freaking great. It's in there, but it's a puzzle game, damn it, and it doesn't need that sort of thing. His criticism of the music is that it doesn't need music? These people were hilarious back then, man. You can tell they wrote these reviews after they play a game for like 2 hours and just pump these out. There's like no thought behind them at all. It's so funny. Control is sharp and responsive, luckily. For one misstep in this game and you're a dead man. Intelligent Qube may be hard, but at least it's simple to control. I keep comparing the game to Tetris because that seems to be what everyone else is comparing Intelligent Qube to. What a critic. In terms of innovation, Tetris wins. In terms of fun, Tetris wins. In terms of a two-player mode, many of the variants of Tetris win. That's funny. These are all funny. The bottom line is that you can pick up a cheap copy of Tetris for the Super Nintendo, Game Boy, or even your keychain for a whole lot cheaper than the full-price CD that is Intelligent Qube. C on its report card. Negatives, bad graphics, two-player mode blows, too hard. Positives, okay in the beginning. And there you go. GameRevolution's coverage, my coverage of GameRevolution's coverage of Intelligent Qube. I give it I don't think I'm going to get in the habit of rating these. Maybe I'll use the same rating system they use for the game on the review. That's a good idea. I'm going to give this A+. Intelligent Qube was enough of a hit to be followed up by a few sequels over the following years. IQ Final dropped the year after in Japan, which added several new modes alongside the standard one, none of which I find particularly enhance the core experience. Ugh, dodging these forbidden cube walls is so annoying. IQ Remix Plus was released in 2000 for the PlayStation 2, and dear lord, it might be one of the ugliest, most horrifically eye-straining games I've ever seen. Why is it so blurry? And these background effects are appalling. What were they thinking? Finally, there was IQ Mania on the PSP, a sort of expanded port of IQ Final, with nothing much exciting about it, aside from having Intelligent Qube on the go, I suppose. In my opinion, none of the sequels come close to the magic and atmosphere of the original. A game which I definitely see myself replaying every couple of years to get my purgatorial puzzle action fix. A much better follow-up to the OG Intelligent Qube was a game that came out just 6 months after it, from the same production team of Yamamoto and Sawaguchi, the highly underrated Ghost in the Shell, which might be the best mech game on the original PlayStation, at least in terms of controls, which still feels snappy and responsive to this day. Regarding Masahiko Sato's future in game development, there unfortunately isn't much of one. Upon Intelligent Qube's release, it seemed his ambitions were at a high point. I don't think I could make anything ever matching Tetris, but I'd like to think I could. That's the kind of game I want to make, he told the PlayStation Magazine in regards to what his next project would be. But nothing I could find from him came to light until many years later when he released the bizarre downloadable title Influence for the PSP, a game that while at first looks inscrutable and a bit crap, I found myself getting slightly addicted to as I was recording this footage. I guess that's kind of Sato's thing. Despite Intelligent Qube not having the greatest legacy in terms of its own IP and creator output, I do think its stylistic influence has cropped up a few times over the years in other puzzle games. 2005's Intelligent License for the PSP was released in the West as PQ Practical Intelligence Quotient, in what seems to me a deliberate attempt at encroaching upon Intelligent Qube's brand. The game itself is a bit of a letdown by comparison, however, being little more than a haphazard smorgasbord of box stacking, maze, and stealth puzzles. Another game that gives me the Intelligent Qube feelsies is Sony's own Echochrome. Its abstract visuals and classy orchestral score certainly borrow from the same aesthetic tool chest. Unfortunately, to me at least, Echochrome is a slow, tedious experience that veers dangerously close to mobile touchscreen gaming. No thanks. There are others I could mention, but regardless, you don't have to bother with lesser options, because the high IQ folks over at Sony have included Intelligent Qube in the Classics catalog available on all modern PlayStations. Nice. You know, I remember the first time I ever saw Intelligent Qube in action. It was at the house of my soccer teammate, whom I will refer to as Larry Jackson. He may make a few more appearances in my personal reflections, so bonus points if you can remember that name. I can still remember the arrangement of his living room as I was staring at his television in 9-year-old disbelief at its haunting, oppressive graphics. But when I gave the demo a play, I could make neither heads nor tails of it. That memory stuck with me over the years, and I thought about the game from time to time, but I don't think I ever really gave the game a proper go until I decided to do so now for Electronic Journeys. I definitely emulated a short session of it here and there as I dug around in the PlayStation library looking for stuff to play over the years, but it wasn't until just recently that I really immersed myself in its experience. I'm glad I did, because it's now one of my favorite puzzle games on the PlayStation, maybe even number one. But how does it stack up against the whopping one other game we have covered so far on the show? Let's enter the Goat Gauntlet? Yeah, I think I'm going to name this segment Goat Gauntlet, the Goat Gauntlet. Will it stick? Who knows? So, do I like this game more than Klonoa? No, I don't. It's Klonoa first, Intelligent Qube second. That's it. That's today's Goat Gauntlet. As for you guys out there, yes, I wholeheartedly recommend giving Intelligent Qube a go. I think it's one of the most timeless experiences to be had on the original PlayStation, and it's readily available on modern PlayStation hardware. Granted, if you don't like puzzle or puzzle action games, I don't think this game is going to flip you on the genre, but hey, you should like puzzle and puzzle action games. Why? Because I want more of them to be made, so I can enjoy them, that's why! Also, you really don't have to play on the hardest difficulty or go for the 1cc like I did. It is a perfectly fulfilling experience on the beginner level with the helper arrows, and in fact, when I started playing it for this episode, that's how I thought the game was designed to be played. The only caveat with playing on the lowest difficulty is that the game does not reward you with the plot-explaining ending for clearing it. However, on all difficulties, the game has checkpoints between stages and doesn't penalize you for taking multiple tries to get through them apart from resetting your score. With a little practice and tenacity, I think pretty much anyone dedicated to doing so could clear it. Give it a shot! Be sure to let me know in the comments how much you hate it. Okie doke, here we are at the end of Electronic Journeys Episode 2. iQue Intelligent Qube is the second game to officially be selected for our Electronic Journeys video game canon. For its uniquely oppressive take on the puzzle action genre, for its mythological expressiveness, and for the tense, mind-melting experience of surviving through it, this edition's a no-brainer. So long, everyone. We'll meet again soon on another journey.
Perfect!
Thanks for watching to the end of the video, and extra thanks to those of you that have already subscribed to the channel. We're almost to 50 subs from just the first video, so I think that's pretty good. If you want to support our efforts with the Electronic Journeys project and you have not already subscribed, I encourage you to do so, as there is lots and lots of more great content to come. Also, please like the video and share the show with your family and friends. It goes a long way. We got big plans over here, so the sooner we can open up the channel to memberships, the sooner we can get to more of them. For more direct ways to support the show now, you can check out any of the apps I currently have in the iOS App Store. There's Punchline, a collaborative joke writing app that's kind of like a never-ending game of Cards Against Humanity. Nonogram Infinity, a puzzle action game just like the topic of today's video, that incorporates Picross mechanics into a fast-paced arcade experience. And finally, The Last Will of Sergei Kurbsky, a puzzle box app that, as far as I know, no one has ever solved. It would be very cool if one of y'all does eventually figure it out. Also, you can support me by purchasing a copy of my poetry book, Useless Musings, from Amazon or any other large online book retailer. You might like it, you never know. That wraps this one up. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.